Okay, now we have our featured speaker coming up, James O'Connor, and you guys can read a lot about him here, but he's going to tell you more about himself. And what he won't tell you is that something I've learned is he's been a big wave surfer for quite a long time, and that's pretty cool, I think. And we're trying to get invited to one of his big wave surfing events so we can check him out. Hey, James, why don't you join us?
Hey everybody, thanks Doug. Let me turn on my video. Can you guys see me? Excellent. Morning everybody. Thank you so much for coming to this. This is going to be a talk and a demonstration of a software platform called the Discovery Platform. And we're going to be talking about the whole idea of customer discovery, what it is, why you need to do it, and how our company software can help you do it in a really high fidelity way. So first thing I like to do is just to understand from the audience, how many of you are familiar with Lean Startup? Is there a way for us to find everybody to vote on that, just so I can get a level set?
We don't have a poll ready for you, but people can put it in chat and we can see.
I can see it. So this is good. So there's 3 people that are familiar with Lean Startup. So, okay, great. So I'm going to ask a couple more questions. And that really helps me to tailor this talk to you guys. How many of you are familiar with the business model Canvas? Okay, 2 of you. Okay, cool. All right, so I would like to let one of the participants tell the group just really succinctly in 2 paragraphs, one of the 2 that raised your hand, tell the group what you think the Lean Startup is. Anybody volunteer to do that? Jared, you got his book and you got the Canvas book. Can we unmute him just for a second to let him talk? Yeah, I see these comments. It's an iterative method to test the business plan. Okay, Susan, please. Yeah, Susan, find, excellent. Yeah, find product market fit. All right, these are all true. And the Lean Startup is a methodology, but it does mean different things to people. You can even see right here, people think it's a way to find product market fit. It's a way to test a business plan. Can we unmute Susan? I'd love to hear what you have to say, Susan. Is that possible, you guys?
Thank you. This is Susan. I don't know if you can. I participated in a 12-week Lean Startup program where I interviewed 10 people a week to test my hypotheses about my business. And while I was doing it each week, updating the business canvas with these new assumptions, each week coming up with new questions to verify my assumptions. It's a quick way to vet your business idea and to quickly pivot and find out where you're wrong.
Excellent. That's really, really well said. And let me just ask you, can you speak to that experience? Was it good? Was it bad? Did you learn much? Was it effective?
The experience was brutal in that it was constantly pushing and challenging me. It helped me understand where I was naive about certain things. The group experience of doing it with a cohort and allowed me to have a certain level of credibility that helped me to attain the interviews that I needed to attain. Anyway, but so I pivoted, I grew from it, and without that group cohort experience, I haven't been making it quite as much momentum and traction as I did with it. Anyway, thank you.
So that was great. Thank you so much for that. Let me ask you this, before you had done that, had you ever done customer discovery?
Before I did that, I worked as a software engineer doing usability studies. So in some ways you can consider usability tests and studies to be a type of user discovery. Yeah. And I've worked at several companies on teams where we incorporated different aspects of user experience and design. But I've never quite had this immersive experience with customers that I had in this situation, where you're collaborating with them to understand what their experiences are and what their needs are.
And was it helpful?
It was incredibly helpful. The thing with customers is they cannot envision a better future quite as well as some other visionaries and can. So there's this kind of a two-headed aspect of it, where you're with them, you're hearing their problems. They cannot imagine a better way of doing things. So sometimes when you ask them a question about your product possibility, they cannot imagine it, so they can't affirm it.
Exactly.
Strange.
That's it. This is excellent, Susan. This is really valuable, because what she basically said was she went through a brutal process, because the process she went through, you are required to interview 100 people. That's a tall order, and it can be grueling. And at the same time, she learned tremendously from it, but she also realized that customers can't tell you what they want, because in fact, that's your job. Your job is to understand their problems, and then it's up to you to solve it. But you can't solve the problem if you don't really understand it. And what happens when you start talking to people, if you do it right, we'll talk about what that means, is your understanding of them and their world and all the stakeholders that would ever be involved in whatever product or service you're building, that understanding turns up. It's like the volume on music. And as you turn that up, you start to understand and gain insights that allow you to actually understand their problems better than they do, because you're thinking about it. And that allows you to create solutions that they would never have imagined, that when you actually show it to them, they go, bingo, you got it. That's my problem. You solved it. So the lean startup can be a whole bunch of things. There's dozens of books upon it. But when I got involved in this, I was confused, and I started looking into it. And what I realized is I needed to go out and do customer discovery. And the first thing I found out was that I sucked at it, that I was really bad at it, because unlike Susan, I had never done anything like this before. I had never talked to customers. I'd been a software engineer, and I wrote code, but I didn't sit down and interview them. So, so basically what happened is I started down this process of doing customer discovery, and that helped me see what I needed to do from a tool standpoint to actually do this in an effective way. Another thing that Susan talked about was the business model canvas. The business model canvas is the idea is to put a whole business plan on a page. And the idea is to, instead of going off for 3 months and doing a whole bunch of, like Steve Blank says, it's a bunch of stuff that never meets the customer, you actually distill your business down into a few simple hypotheses that are falsifiable. And if you do that, then you can go out and do research, customer discovery. It's qualitative research. It's not quantitative research. It's asking them questions about their life and about what's going on with them, so that you can see if there's a fit. Okay. So the goal of customer discovery is to actually invalidate or validate those hypotheses. And part of the process is to actually be just as willing to invalidate something as you are to validate something. Now, we all have cognitive biases, human biases, that we think we're right. We think our idea is good. But when you do customer discovery, you need to put on a new hat and push aside all of that expertise and all of your vision and all of the things that make you passionate about your idea. And you need to go out and find out if anybody really cares, if you're solving a real problem. And when you approach it this way, it simplifies the process. It allows you to get to the truth a lot quicker. And one of the guiding visions of us building this platform was so that people didn't have to do what Susan did. So they didn't have to go through a grueling experience and talk to 100 people. Because I felt when I first started working on this, that if you talk to the right people and you ask the right questions and you get the right insights, you don't have to talk to 100 people. You could do it in a lot less. So that was the vision. That was the idea behind building this platform. And you can look at it when we show you the demo later, and you can decide if this is something you think that could help you to do that. So I want to talk about two things, curiosity and empathy. In the world, there's what's called qualitative research and quantitative research. Quantitative research is what the whole world does because of the internet. We measure how many times you click something, where you go, where you hover your mouse, how many times you went to this feature, how much time you spent type. All these things are quantifiable. They're not qualitative. They don't have any concept of really what's going on inside your head. What are your wishes? What are your desires? What are your problems? And qualitative research kind of got pushed aside when the internet came along. It used to be very popular back in the day when market research companies did a lot of qualitative research. And the main thing that I believe that the lean startup process has done is it's reinvigorated this whole notion of doing customer discovery, which is qualitative research. So if you're going to do it, there's two things you need to do. You need to be curious and you need to be empathetic. Why curiosity? Curiosity is essentially when there's a gap between what you don't know and what you want to know. It's the desire. It's actually a desire. And if you aren't curious, it's going to be really hard to go talk to people and really understand them if you don't care. If you look at Steve Blank's history, he has been in many very successful companies, but his biggest failure was a $75 million startup called Rocket Science. And Rocket Science was a brilliant idea back in the 90s to start a whole new way of doing video games where you created a whole team, where you had all these different people and you created a studio. That's how it's done today. The problem was he was making video games for teenage boys and he didn't care. He had no curiosity or empathy for that space. And he realized later it didn't work and it crashed. So that was a lesson for me, and it made me realize how important it is to have curiosity and empathy. Why empathy? Empathy is putting yourself in your customer's shoes, right? Now just think, you've got some brilliant idea and you're passionate about it, but you have to put that aside and you have to literally turn off all of that knowledge and expertise, and you have to focus on them and try and understand what their life is like. And if you can't do that, then you're going to find you're going to have a lot of customer discovery interviews that can be grueling and hard and boring, and there's no insights coming out of them. So if you drive your customer discovery process from curiosity, the desire to know, and empathy, the ability to understand and put yourself in their shoes, you're going to be much more successful. I believe that curiosity is the precursor to innovation, right? It's literally, it's required for you to do something new. It's something that's never been done before, something that's novel, something that really affects the world. You literally have to be curious. Okay, so I'm going to just list a couple do's and don'ts of customer discovery just to get you kind of in the right frame. And then what I'll do is I'll jump into the platform and show you how it works so you could understand how you could apply this. So I'm going to start with some don'ts. Customer discovery is not a process where you go talk to customers about your product. It's not for you to tell them, here's what I'm thinking of. Do you like that idea? Don't do that. Don't pitch. The reason you don't want to pitch is because you don't want to bias them, and because what you really want to do is find out if just by talking to them, you can see that they have the problem you're solving. As soon as you tell them what you're doing, guess what happens? You invoke politeness. And when people are polite, they don't tell the truth. And the real goal of customer discovery is you want to get to the bottom of things. You want to find out if you're wrong, or if you're just a few degrees off, or if you're spot on. And if you start talking to them with a bunch of passion and excitement, we know what they're going to do. They're going to say, oh, that's a great idea. I really like that. And guess what that is? That's a false confirmation, and that's deadly, right? So the last thing you want is somebody telling you you've got a great idea when you don't, or when they don't even understand it, but they're just responding to your enthusiasm. So don't talk about your idea. Don't ask hypotheticals, right? Hypotheticals give you hypothetical answers. They don't mean anything. You can't use those insights. They are not actionable. Okay, what you should do is ask open-ended questions. You want to get them talking about their life. Ask them to tell their story. Ask them questions like, oh, how important is that? How often do you do that? When's the last time you did that? Tell me about that, right? That you want to start to just get them to open up. And what you'll find when you do customer discovery is that most people want to talk. They have things that they'll be happy to tell you about. And that's where the really important insights come from customer discovery. Your brain should be scanning for them saying things like, well, I wish I had this, or it would be awesome if I could have that, because those are unmet needs. Those are problems that haven't been solved. And if you can line those up with your product, then you know you're onto something. Another really important thing that I think a lot of people don't do when they do customer discovery is after it, you got to debrief. You got to sit down. Ideally, you should record the conversation, because if you record a conversation, then you're not going to be so distracted and stressed out trying to write notes or type down what they said. But you should debrief after the conversation, listen to it, share this with your teammates and the other people in your company, get their thoughts on it, surface those insights so that you can keep track of the important things you learn in customer discovery. Because one of the things that will happen, and I'm sure this probably Susan can speak to this, is that you start interviewing people and you interview one person and maybe have an amazing interview, and another person. Before long, what's happening is you're getting so many new insights that you lose track of the old ones. This is a cognitive bias. It's called recency bias. There's over 180 cognitive biases that humans have, and this is a deadly one because recency bias says the thing that I just heard, the most recent information, gets weighed and seems far more important to me than the thing from 3 months ago, when in fact it may not be. It may not be, but that recency bias can keep you on this treadmill where the most recent discovery interview is the one where you think, oh, we have to do that, and you lose track of the big picture. So I'm a huge fan of doing debriefing, especially with the team, of surfacing your insights and actually letting different team members surface their own insights and see if you guys came to the same conclusion of it. The real goal of this process is to validate your idea or invalidate it and to get to the truth. And that seems easy, but it's a lot harder than you think because, in fact, most entrepreneurs are very smart. They're very passionate. They have a million ideas. They are pig-headed and strong, which is a good thing, right? When it's used correctly, but it can really get you in trouble if that's preventing you from really understanding your customer and their needs and their pain points. Because quite often you'll see people go through this process and they are dead set. I've seen this over and over again where someone is dead set that this is my product and this is who's going to use it and it's going to be huge. And then they go out and do customer discovery and they get a bunch of rejection. And guess what? Quite often the first response to rejection is, well, guess what? I'm not talking to the right person. They don't really know. I should talk to someone else. When in fact, they're actually telling you the truth. And quite often, if you listen carefully, you'll find out some gems of insight from that conversation that are actually going to lead you to pivot. Just maybe it's a 6 degrees or 3 degrees, pivot in a different direction where all of a sudden you start finding a lot of resonance with customers that problem is important to them. So, does anybody have any questions before I know I talked and I talked pretty fast, but does anybody have any questions before I jump into a demo of the platform so you can actually see how you could do this in our software?
Yeah, James, it's funny. I was just about to interrupt you, so great timing. We've got a couple questions here. First one, can you give us some specific examples of questions you need to ask or not to ask when you're going through that process?
Absolutely. In our platform, we actually allow you to create templates with question sets, and we provide you with a starter template to use from. And when I jump into the demo, I'm gonna show you that. Here, let me just I'm gonna do a screen share right now, and I'm gonna take you through those questions. So just give me a second here. So you guys should all see my business model canvas right now. And so actually, you know what, before I jump around, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to just show you. In our system, if you click on your avatar, you click help, we have an interview template. We actually have it in a Google Docs so you can use it to copy and paste. And this has a bunch of really good questions. So here's a great one. Tell me how you do blah, blah, blah today, right? So what does that do? That's an open-ended question that gets them to start talking about what they do, their life. I mean, I have no idea what your product or what your solution, or your service is, but that question alone will get people talking, and you will get, people will start saying things that you just never imagined because you're just going to be getting a bunch of thought process, just literally stream of consciousness things from these people today. Here's another great question. Do you use any tools or software to help you get that done, right? Because that'll help you understand how important it is to them, what the real process is around that. You can ask them questions like, when's the last time you did it, right? How often do you do this? How important is this? Does anybody else in your company do this, right? Just questions for them to actually start just letting go and telling you all sorts of things about what they do in their job, what they do in their world. Quite often, you come into a situation and you think you have a clear understanding of somebody's job and what they do. And then when you ask a few open-ended questions like that, they just start telling you things that you just had no idea. Oh, your organization is so different. And you also have this parallel responsibility. And I didn't know that. And then you can find out whether that happens anywhere else. And now you're collecting data, these insights that you can use to actually pattern match and find out if there's a real problem that you need to solve. This is an awesome question. If you could wave a magic wand and be able to do anything that you can't do today, what would that be? That will surface in people problems that they don't even think can be solved, that they haven't even thought about, that they may have, that allows them to just talk from an aspirational standpoint. Then you can ask them, last time you did that thing, what were you doing before you got started, right? And then you can ask them what you did afterward, because that's going to get them to talk about the process. Maybe there's other people involved, right? You just don't know. And by the way, all through this process, don't feel like you have to stick to a script. And if they say something, what you really want to do is quickly think about any follow-up questions that you could ask, because these will lead to insights that could be, gold, solid gold when you're talking to customers. Here's another one I love to ask at the end of an interview. Is there anything else about this that I should ask? Did I get it right? Or did I miss anything? And quite often, that question usually results in a pause where they're like, wait. And then they'll think of that last thing that, by the way, if you hadn't asked that question, you would have never got that insight. And quite often, whatever they tell you, whatever that thing is that you forgot to ask about, that is now a new question for you to ask in your follow-up interview. And another thing is, as Susan talked about, it can be grueling to talk to 100 people, right? It can be grueling to find them, okay? But if you ask the person you're talking to at the end of the interview, do you know anybody else that I should talk to? Is there anybody you know in your network that I should talk to? You will get a whole bunch of referrals. I did a consulting project for FXPAL, Fuji Xerox Palo Alto Labs. We took 5 teams through a cohort, just like what Susan went through. And these were all researchers. They did not want to do this at all. And on the very first interview with one of the teams, I conducted the interview because they hadn't done it. And the subject they were interviewing gave them so much information, it blew their mind. They had no idea how much it validated what they were doing, and at the same time surfaced a bunch of things they shouldn't do. And at the end of the conversation, the person we were interviewing, I said to him, is there anybody else that you could recommend that I talk to? And he goes, there are 35 people in my Rolodex. I would be happy to share all of their information with you and give you warm introductions. All I ask is that when you have a product here, you let me see it first. So it can be amazing to actually ask that question and make your life a lot easier, because typically the way you do customer discovery, how you find those people, you might be cold calling people, you might be looking people up on LinkedIn, you might be tapping your network, and it can be a struggle to find the first people. But the best referrals, the best customer discovery will be referrals from people that you're currently doing customer discovery with. So,
hey, James, can I ask you a question about on that line?
mm-hmm.
What are some of the top incentives for customer consent to get interviewed?
That's a great question. There could be a couple, but the one that I found most effective is that the way I approach it is I basically say to people, I'm doing research to try and understand your space. You have expertise, and I just want to take a few minutes of your time to just chat with you and learn from what you know and get a few insights. And as soon as you tell people that you're doing research and that they're an expert and that they have valuable information, most people, actually feel flattered, and at the same time, feel it's an opportunity for them to do good because they get to use their expertise to help someone who's doing research to get valuable information. And I know that I'm going to talk bad about some forms of research that I don't think work really well. I'm not a huge fan of focus groups. I'm not a huge fan of surveys. I mean, they have their place. And a lot of people get hit up all the time. Will you take the survey? Will you take the survey? And every time you take a survey, the first thing they start doing is just taking you down, railroading you through this thing where you know they're really trying to market to you. And that's really annoying. And you just give up on those surveys. Whereas in customer discovery, you're really trying to talk to the person. You're trying to actually understand them and demonstrate that with your empathy of them. And if you're talking to people and you're empathetic and you're curious and you're letting them talk, most people, I have found, most people will give you a lot more time than that 15 or 20 minutes. I got on the phone for a customer discovery call with the chief innovation officer for Intel. I felt so fortunate to even land an interview with a person like this. And it was mind-blowing. This guy was telling me things. He was explaining how they do innovation. I had no idea the kind of projects they had in all these different divisions of Intel. And we were supposed to talk for 20 minutes. We talked for over an hour until his executive assistant interrupted and said, "You got to go to another meeting." And he said to me, "James, I'm enjoying this conversation so much. I want to reschedule and spend another hour with you." And sure enough, we got on a call an hour later that went to an hour and a half, and I had the whole thing recorded. And I got so many insights that just literally, I mean, to talk about something to percolate on. I listened to those interviews repeatedly and got insights and got an understanding of how a big company like that does corporate innovation in ways that I could never have found that by researching on the internet. So does that answer your question? And do we have any more?
Yeah, no, we have actually three more. Next one is about privacy, a privacy question. I assume you have a step in this process to tell people ahead of time that you'll be recording.
Absolutely.
If so, yeah, how do you go about doing that?
That's a great question. And that's a really good question. So first of all, just you have to be respectful of the fact that you are asking them to help you out. And you absolutely respect the privacy. So here's how I frame it. I say, I really want to focus on this conversation and I don't want to be distracted taking notes. Would you mind if I just recorded the conversation so that I can just pay attention? And if at any point in time you want to talk about something you don't want recorded, just tell me, I'll hit pause. And if at the end of this, for any reason, you feel like you just would rather that hadn't been recorded, I will destroy the recording. And you have to respect that. And you have to let them know that they're doing you a favor and that you respect that. And it's, merely the reason you want to record it is because you won't want to be distracted. Because I can tell you, trying to take notes and pay attention is hard. And what'll happen is your attention will wane because you'll be doing this instead of paying attention. So recording an interview is fantastic. What it does is it frees you up to spend, if you're going to do any of this or doing any typing, writing, you can focus on writing your insights instead of trying to capture what happened. So always leave it in their control, give them the opportunity to opt out. And I'll even say to them, even if you call me up a week from now or a month from now or down later, you say, I just wish I hadn't have said those things and I want it. And I'll say, okay, I'll even just delete the interview from my system, right? So put them in control and let them know that you respect their privacy. And another thing I will say to people is, sometimes people say, well, what if I say something, that I shouldn't have said, right? And I say to them, I want you to understand, I don't want you to say anything that you shouldn't say, right? I really don't. I mean, I may ask you a question, and I've even had people where I started talking about something in their job, and this is actually, in an executive who literally, to try and answer my question, he had to start talking about the political situation at his company and how dysfunctional it was, and all he said was, maybe I shouldn't talk about this. And I said, do you want me to hit pause? And he said, sure. And I hit pause. And then he started telling me about some politics, right? And by the way, it's not that I really wanted to know that politics, but he kind of wanted to say it, and it actually helped me understand that, a scenario that exists that I wasn't aware of, the way innovation happens in companies. It had to do with the fact that in most big corporations, anybody who's got a high level job in innovation, it's kind of like a Formula One race car driver. If you're not, in the top 5 really fast, you're going to get kicked out. And he was talking about a bunch of stuff like that, which, by the way, I didn't even know about. So does that answer your question? Any
Yeah.
other questions?
Yeah, actually, we have a good question here. Do you pick the kind of customer you want to talk to before you do the interview, or do you keep an open mind about who to approach? And this person that's asking the question, they are starting a clothing business and want to get some insight on that.
Yes, I think both. As we go into the business model canvas, you'll see that you definitely want to have what are called customer segments. And we'll go into that a little bit when I show you the demo of the platform. You absolutely want to have, clarity on who your customer segments are. But there may be other customer segments out there that you don't know about. So if you get a chance to interview somebody who you might think is outside of that, you might be surprised. So I do not try and be really narrow. What I do try and do narrow is I try and focus on certain customer segments first, the ones that I really think are important. Also, there's this notion of what's called a beachhead market. If you're a startup, and maybe your market is going to compete with Walmart, and it could also compete with little boutique stores, for example. Maybe you want to go after boutique stores first because that's where you can actually get some success and prove the product, generate some revenue, and put you in a position to battle a big market. So you have to think strategically about this, but at the same time, I would not interview somebody who I thought was outside a customer segment if I thought that person had something that could be valuable towards helping me understand my business model.
Great. Okay. Thanks, James. One last question. Can this discovery platform be used with jobs to be done?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, it can. Wow. I mean, that the jobs to be done is a different process, but like all these processes, design thinking, jobs to be done, lean startup, you could go on and on and on. All of them at the core require you to go and do customer discovery and understand your customer. They all have slightly, more than slightly, they all have different methodologies and ways of approaching it, but doing good, solid customer discovery and understanding customers' needs and pain points is super, super important. So yes, I think customer discovery, man, is a skill that it's a Jedi skill. Okay. You know what I mean by that, right? It's a skill that Jedis have it. Everybody could have it. They just don't have it. Once you have it, you realize how powerful it is and how effective it can be used everywhere. And every part of a business, being able to understand customers and talk to them in a way where you gain these insights is extremely valuable. And I believe that in the future, that companies that don't do customer discoveries and don't develop that as a core competency inside their company are going to be at a huge disadvantage to the ones that do. I think it's going to separate the winners from the losers. And if you look at almost all successful companies, you'll find whether they talk about it as customer discovery or not, the ones that do best are the ones that understand their customers, understand their pain points. And when you do that and you build products that meet their needs, that's where you get loyalty. That's where you get people that love your products. That's where you get a viral acceptance of your product because it's effective. So it's too powerful of a force to ignore. And it's not really being practiced in the enterprise today the way I think it's going to be. I think we're going to see a transformation, just like when, as a metaphor, think of CRMs. There used to be a time when a sales guy didn't use a CRM. What did he do? He had a Rolodex, right? And why did you hire him? Because his Rolodex, who was in it. And then there was this point where they're like, I'm tired of that guy quitting and leaving and going somewhere else and taking all that institutional knowledge with me. And as soon as they had a CRM, they had a tool that allowed them to have a methodology to handle sales. And if that guy left, all that information was in that system. And in the same way, what I'm trying to build is a platform that allows you to keep track of all your customer discovery across your entire enterprise, across all these different teams, so that all these insights don't get lost when the person who knows it moves around. And I believe, just like, if you look at any corporation, top salespeople make more money than everybody else. And I think in the same way that people that understand how to do customer discovery and can be effective that adds a powerful capacity to a team to de-risk innovation and ship products that you know are going to be successful. You know before you ship them, because you've already talked to the customers and you've already seen the reaction to it, and you understand the problems from the very beginning, instead of what the model used to be like, I'm going to go in stealth mode and I'm going to build this amazing product, and then here it is. And then you show it to somebody, and what do they say? They're like, meh, yeah, whatever. And you're like, well, then you say, what didn't you like about it? Now you're starting to do customer discovery. Don't wait. Do it now. Do it early. If anything, you do not want to waste your life, your time, your money, the time of the people that you bring into your startup. You don't want to waste that building something nobody wants. And so building that certainty up front and the clarity that comes from customer discovery is so incredibly valuable. And if you go to a venture capitalist and you say, I got a great idea, you know what he's going to say? I don't care about your great idea. But if you go to a venture capitalist and you say, I have a great idea, but guess what? I talked to 100 people and then I improved upon it. And here's what I learned. And this is what I learned about my business model. And I realized that if I pivoted here and if I just changed the way I sold it, or this revenue stream changed, all of a sudden it made a lot more sense. That venture capitalist is going to listen to you, and you're going to get a hearing ear. And I think we're seeing a transformation in the whole startup community where that is going to be expected. It's going to be just, table stakes going forward. Hasn't really happened right now, but if my software is successful, then you'll have a tool and you'll see that happening more.
Okay, great, James. Since we're getting kind of close to the end of the hour, can we do the demonstration, and then attendees, if you have a couple questions, we'll go over those in about 10 minutes.
Okay, let me just see what time. Okay, we have 15 minutes. Okay, I'm gonna just rip through it really quick. I'm gonna take you through just kind of conceptually. Okay, so I'm not going to show you all the features, right? But what you're looking at is if you logged into my platform, this is where you'd land on a business model canvas. This is called the Lean Canvas. Okay, we support the Lean Canvas, the standard business model canvas, the one that you buy books on, and the mission model canvas. That's Steve Blank's canvas. I love this one for startups because if you look at that left box, it's called problem, right? And that's really important. If you have a startup idea and somebody says to you, what's the problem you solve? And you can go and you say, well, it does this, then you haven't figured that out. You need to understand the problem you're solving. You need to understand the value proposition. What is the value of this solution, right? And then you need to understand your customer segments. What's the rest of this stuff? We could talk for hours about your unfair advantage, about your solution, key metrics, channels, revenue streams, cost structures. Yuck, it's too much, right? That's why we invented the skinny canvas. The skinny canvas says, I'm just going to focus on my customer segments, value proposition, and problem. Why do we build this? Because after watching thousands and thousands of teams use this software, what I found is that they start off and they write out 50 different hypotheses, and they only work on the ones in this bucket. And the rest are a distraction until you get some validation, until you have a customer segment who says, I have that problem and that valid proposition is appealing to me. If you're worrying about your revenue streams and all these other things, they're just secondary. My biggest problem with the business model canvas, it has no concept of sequence or priority, and the skinny canvas gives you that. It just allows you to focus on those three things and get a hit. Now, in our business model canvas, all you do, if you want to create a new hypothesis, you just type and you hit return, and it's automatically saved, okay? And one of the really basic concepts is that every hypothesis should be connected to a customer segment. If you have a hypothesis on your canvas, but you can't explain which customer segment it connects to, then you need to sit down and think about that, and you probably don't have a good value proposition, or you probably don't understand something. That's something for you to debug. So what we do is we give you a simple mechanism. As soon as you hover over hypotheses, you have all these things you can do. And one of them is you can link this to your customer segments. So I'm going to link this to customer segment 2. And as soon as I do that, you'll see, boom, it lights up. So whenever you hover over a hypothesis, you can see everything it's connected to. And when you hover over a customer segment, you can see everything it's connected to. And when you try and validate a customer segment, you should really have some validation for all the dependent hypotheses on that. This gets used so much that you can even, if you look at this link icon, you can click on that and it just filters the business model canvas. So you're only looking at that customer segment and everything dependent, and it allows you to focus at one customer segment at a time. You want to get out of this mode, just click the X. Okay, so you saw how I created a hypothesis. There's a couple things you can do with one. You can validate it and invalidate it just by clicking this, oops, excuse me, you clicking the check and the red. This happens quite often where you think you're valid, you validate it, and then you do more discovery and you find you're wrong. And then sometimes you go, hey, I still don't know, and I'm gonna keep doing customer discovery. We also have a whole commenting mechanism that allows you to comment, have a dynamic thread of conversation on each hypothesis with your teammates, and if you're working in a cohort like Susan did, with the instructors on the team. And this is a way for them to give you feedback about what's going on. Another really cool feature about a business model canvas is we keep a complete history of everything you've done. So you can go back to day one and you can literally, I'm just using the cursor, right cursor key, you could step through every change you ever made in your business model canvas and see how it evolved. And you'll notice when you're in that mode, there's this orange box around it that says, hey, we're in the past, you can't edit it, it's locked out. If you want to go back to the future, go back to today, you do that and it does it. So that's just a really useful feature. So you can also snapshot it with this feature right here. I can export the canvas so I can go to any point in time, snapshot it, then go to another time, snapshot it. This is really great when you're doing presentations, as Susan did in a cohort setting where you're saying, hey, this is where I was last week. I did 15 interviews. I talked to these people. This is where I am this week. So any questions about the business model canvas? Just the point I want you to understand is it's not that complicated, but what you want to do is go through a process where you distill your customer segments, your value propositions, and your problems into falsifiable hypotheses that is like the starting point for the objectives of your customer discovery. Any questions on that before I jump into the interview module, which is really the meat of the platform?
I don't think there's any questions right now.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so this is the real meat of the platform. It's really where you do customer discovery. And what you see here is on the left is all of the people you have interviewed. And in the center this is where the interview notes are and the transcription from the interview. And this feature right here is basically what in the qualitative research world is called coding an interview or annotation or generating insights. So I got an interview here, just a simple one based on those questions we asked before. This is a rich text editor. You can put video and web links and pictures, and you could do all sorts of bulleted lists and all that kind of stuff. We even have a template system. So if you look at this, when I click view templates, I can have a template here and I can have a different template for each customer segment or for archetypes that I'm trying to talk to. I can have question sets so that when I start a new interview, when I go, I want to create a new interview, and I just go test, right? And I say, what's this based off of? I say template 1. And when I click save, I already have an interview pre-populated with those questions that I want to ask that particular archetype. Just gives you easier workflow to start from. Let me just delete this. Everything in our platform is auto-saved, by the way. So it's, that makes it easy for you not have to worry about that. So let's go back to this interview. So we have 2 what we call artifacts from the interview. 1 is the notes you took, and 2 is the transcript of that conversation. This is a really powerful feature we have built in our platform that allows you to record the conversation. You can either do it like we're doing right now on Zoom call. You can record it in Zoom or whatever your, Skype or however you do it, you can record it. Another way is this device. Your smartphone is a really good voice recorder because it has high quality microphones. It does noise cancellation, automatic volume adjust. So take that, ask them if you can record, hit the record button, set it right between the 2 of you, and you'll get a really good quality recording. We're living in an age where, to be able to do transcription and have high quality recording has been something computer science and the tech industry has been banging its head against the wall for 40 years, and finally it's arrived. If you record the conversation, I'm just going to show you what this looks like if you create a new interview. I'm just do that. So if you record the conversation, what will happen is when you click on the transcript tab, you have 2 options. You can either just drag the audio file here or click browse and pick it somewhere on your drive, or you could click record audio and it'll just literally start live recording right into your laptop. So it's very, very easy to do that. And then when you click done, or when you upload it, it'll say, okay, I'm going to analyze it, make sure it's a file. It'll send it up to the cloud. And then you have to say, yes, I want to transcribe it, because there's a cost of 8 cents. 8 cents a minute for transcription, and we typically give teams $20 worth of free transcription to get them started on their customer discovery process. Okay, so now I'm going to go and show you what it actually looks like when you do a transcript. Here's one right here from a customer discovery interview. And what you can see is it knows who the speaker is, it knows who said what, It's punctuated. All of this is done with state-of-the-art speech recognition. As a matter of fact, right here, if you click this little guy right here, that allows you to document the speakers, because when they come back from the speech recognizer, it'll just say speaker 1, speaker 2, and then you could type in the names of the people right there. This is an editor. You can edit it. The audio is synchronized with the text. I'm going to show you how that works in a second here. I'm going to unplug my microphone and turn up my speakers so you can see that. It has a bunch of powerful features I can't go into right now because we're short on time, but it's really cool. You can select audio and play it. You can jump around, move the playback head. You can auto punctuate. You can speed up and slow down. It's very, very useful. Our users are absolutely falling in love with this. We just got an unsolicited email from a user today that says, I can't believe my mom would have, she was a researcher, my mom would have given us one of our kids to have this functionality. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit play. I'm going to unplug right here so you can, my audio will degrade because I'm going to go to my internal mic. I'm just going to hit play, turn the speakers here. And what you're going to see is as the audio is playing, the word that's spoken is highlighted. So.
All right, so thank you for taking the time to meet with me today. Really appreciate it.
No problem. I'm happy to help.
Can you tell me a little bit about what you do here at Awesome Inc?
Currently, I'm
So what you can see is that this transcript is synchronized with the audio, right? And that allows you to play along and watch it, but that also allows you the ability to annotate this, okay? So I'm gonna explain and show you the annotation feature really quickly here, but I want you to understand this annotation mechanism works identical on the audio as it does on the notes you took. So I'm just going to scroll to some place and say, okay, this is a really important thing. Now watch, all I'm doing is just selecting some text. I still have the mouse down. And I want you to look on the right side of the screen where you see those colored buttons and it says select text to create an insight. So all I do is select this. And as soon as I do, I've started the process of creating an annotation. I'm going to leave this unplugged. Okay. So that voice of the customer is actually the text that I'm actually trying to save. They said something important. I want to keep track of it. So what I can do is I can categorize it. Now we have some built-in categories here. General insight, which is the default, a new feature, like if a customer says, wow, I wish I had this feature, you want to keep track of that. When you come up with a new question in customer discovery, because you ask them, is there anything I didn't ask? And they say, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. You want to tag that. When they give you interview candidates, you want to track that. And when you come up with the new hypotheses, which quite often happens in customer discovery that you want to put on your business model canvas, you tag it. So we'll just say, oh, they asked for this feature, right? Now that turned green, so I know what category it is. And I could type in my comment, okay? So I'm just going to type in a comment here, but here you'd write what your thoughts are on this insight or what they said. And here's where it gets really powerful. This little gray button allows you to link that insight as evidence that either supports or doesn't support the hypotheses on your business model canvas. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to say, this supports my customer segment too. And now I've created a link back from this insight to that hypothesis on my business model canvas. And I'm literally connecting together all of the insights from customer discovery to my hypotheses. So I have underlying evidence to validate and invalidate them. And I could click on the thumbs up, the thumbs down, whether it supports it or it doesn't support it. So let's just say this supports it. And by the way, you can link this insight to multiple hypotheses on the business model canvas. So now I click the save button and voila, down below, you can see on this list of all the insights in this interview, there it is. And now if I go back to my business model canvas and we go look at customer segment 2, you look at customer segment 2, now you can see that little icon, the green thumbs up and the red thumbs down. I can see how much supporting evidence I have for each one of my hypotheses because we're tracking it for you. And if I come over here, and if I hover over that thumbs up and I click on it, what it will do, it'll open a little window and it'll show me the list of all the evidence for the hypotheses. And if I want to, I can just hit the play button and actually hear the voice of the customer.
In all honesty, we needed to find a better way to test more ideas quicker and to improve the ROI for a project down the road.
So now I could demonstrate all the evidence that led me to make the decision to validate or invalidate that hypothesis on the business model canvas. And if I want to, I can actually just click on this. It'll jump me right back to the customer discovery interview. So now you're keeping this network of all of these insights connected to your hypotheses. You're following the scientific process because you took a hypothesis, you did an experiment, which is customer discovery, it yielded some evidence. That evidence either supports or doesn't support it. And in a very simple mechanism, without a whole lot of work, you're actually building up this library of insights, what I call the needles in the haystack. You know, you might have a 30-minute interview and there might be 4 insights that just really helped you out. And now you can keep track of them. You can go back and play them. And if they're from the text of your notes, it's the same mechanism works that way. And you've categorized them. And now you have a workflow that allows you to keep track of new features, questions you want to add, interview candidates, new hypotheses. And this becomes a really powerful way for you to overcome that recency bias, where the most recent thing is important, when you can go back and you could say, I'm going to look at all of my insights, right? And now, boom, in one view, I could see all of the insights I've ever come up with. I could play them right here. I can hover over here and see the exact quote from the person. I could see my comment. I could see which hypotheses it's linked to. If I click on it right here, it'll jump me right back to it. And if I want to, I can even filter this. So I can say, I want to see all the insights that came from Jared, right? He's not got very many, right? Or I could say, I want to see all of the insights that are connected to, interview candidates that I need to go schedule interviews with. Or I want to see all the new feature requests because I'm going to meet with engineering and talk with them about what we've learned from customer discovery. Or I could say, I just want to see all of the customer discovery insights that we've got related to our customer segments. So with just a few clicks of the mouse, you literally could sift through and look at the stuff, and a new stakeholder can come along and look at all the insights. You could share it. You could use it as team discussions. It becomes a really powerful way to keep track of all of the work you did through that customer discovery and make sure you don't lose those important insights.
Great, James. Is that pretty much the demonstration?
Yeah, that's pretty much the demonstration. I would to all the other sub features of the platform. But
Sorry, we're rushing you.
No worries. I understand.
So we have
left.
Yeah, let's ask one more question here, and just let the audience know, if you would like to be eligible to win one of the 10 Emerge 4 masks, please go. You'll see in the chat. Doug put a post there. There's a bit.ly link that you can click on. And again, you can be able to win one of the Merge 4 mask. So last question here. Under the current circumstances, COVID, who are the majority of your customers? What type of sizes of businesses or institutions use your actual product?
That's a great question. So my business model has multiple customer segments. One is government, academia, enterprise, startups, and incubators and accelerators. I thought COVID was going to be hard for our company. It's been the opposite. It's surprised me. So first of all, everybody's switching to online learning. So academic institutions, we're in about 40, 45 different universities that run these programs. They are calling us up, they are seeing our platform, and they're running their cohorts completely all virtual. Right now we're doing 3 cohorts are running right now simultaneously with the National Science Foundation. Those cohorts usually would have about 100 people in them. They now have about 150 people in them. I have enterprise customers that I've been talking to, and those are long, slow sales cycles, that are now saying, we want to do a pilot with you. So that's been a hit. We have incubators and accelerators that are talking to us, actually now starting to talk to accelerator networks that want to use this to start a bunch of programs. So my biggest customer segments are government, like the NIH and the National Science Foundation, academia, because almost every university has an entrepreneurship department where UCSC uses our software. What has been the least successful customer segment all along, which I've pretty much marked invalid, is startups. Why? Because Susan made a really good point. She did this in a cohort and she worked her butt off, but when she tried to do it on her own, it's just, you don't get the same results. And our software has a whole set of features to handle a cohort setting with 20 teams working it together, collaborating with each other. I could talk for an hour about that. But so that really my main customers are everybody except startups, because startups tend to convince themselves that they're too busy doing everything else to actually take customer discovery seriously.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, James, for the demonstration and for answering our questions. Now I will move it back to Doug.